Hello. I'd like to take a moment to tell you about my breastfeeding journey as well as the emotional side postpartum after my rather difficult birth. In my birthing story, I had talked about how my son was taken to NICU. He was taken there due to respiratory issues, and they kept him there longer because during the laboring process, I'd been given an epidural. Directly following the epidural, I had a reaction where my temperature spiked. When my son was born, his temperature was raised as well. So they admitted him to NICU because they thought that he may have an infection. They wanted to keep him there to later test his blood cultures to see if that was something that had happened. They put him on antibiotics and they kept him on IVs in this box on the other side of the hospital. That was very devastating for me to stay in the maternity ward. I could hear all the other babies and I didn't know where mine was. It was really hard, and I think that without my breastfeeding journey going as well as it did, I think I would have had a much bigger problem emotionally getting over the trauma of this birth. I had mentioned before that the NICU ward was not a friendly place to be. The nurses were not very welcoming. They were very insistent that I tried formula. They kept insisting that because my son was on antibiotics that he must be dehydrated and that the initial colostrum that my body was producing was not enough to help him through that. So they just kept insisting and making me feel like I wasn't doing the right thing, or they'd be like, oh, you really should do this. And it was the last straw. Everything else had gone wrong and I wanted breastfeeding to go right. Prior to the delivery, through my pregnancy, I'd done a lot of research and I felt that breastfeeding was for me. That was the direction I wanted to go in. I didn't know anyone else that breastfed that lived close to me. I have a best friend that was out of state who did it, and she gave me all the information that she could over the phone, but it's not something that I had a clear idea of how to do. I'd never seen anyone do it. So I did some research on YouTube. I did join a group called Milky Mamas on Facebook, which is a secret group that you ask permission to be a part of. It's a group of really wonderful, passionate women who are very serious about what they are talking about. There are a lot of lactation consultants and experienced moms. And I wasn't sure kind of what to ask at first. I was a little intimidated. I saw that there were a lot of frequent questions that were being answered, and I'd kind of lurk in the comments and see like, okay, well, that's how they address this issue. I did notice that there were a lot of issues I had no idea about. I didn't know what thrush or mastitis or the different, positions were, or keeping the weight up. The most common problem seemed to be a lack of supply. And those were all things that I was kind of like, okay, well, I want to try to avoid those. And so I was reading up as much as I could, but I knew that, my experience would be personal because every baby's different. So when I got the baby, when I was in the NICU ward and I said I wanted to nurse, they kept saying, well, you got to wait for the lactation consultant. And I was getting so frustrated. Finally, this angel came, this really wonderful person. And she helped me actually hold my baby. I was so awkward. I'd never held a baby before, and I was like scared of them. I thought they were so fragile. So she helped me kind of position my child with this big IV on his arm and trying to get him in the most comfortable place possible. And she, taught me what to do. It was really awkward at first. I thought it would come to me more naturally. I thought my child would instinctively know what to do, and he didn't. And it was kind of a nice thing that we learned together. The breastfeeding was how we developed the bond that we missed during the whole birthing process. Unfortunately, I felt like I had to keep fighting to get there. My husband was feeling that the hospital wasn't really friendly for him either. We were taking turns being in there the whole time. We didn't feel safe leaving him alone with the staff. just based on how all of our wishes were not being followed. So, we weren't getting a lot of sleep, taking turns just trying to protect this baby. I didn't know him very well. And finally, on the third day, we were able to take him home with us. Now, what the lactation consultant had done was she had instructed me to pump every 3 hours in addition to nursing my child on demand to try to get that supply to come as quickly as possible. I believe her goal in that was she wasn't sure how long my son would be there. She was trying to get me to produce enough milk to where I could pump it and send it into NICU in case, I had to leave and he would still be there. Unfortunately, what that did was it told my body to ask for a lot more milk than I needed just for this one child. I developed an overproduction and oversupply. I was pumping a lot of milk. I was very uncomfortable. And she kept saying, it's good to have a stockpile. But I wish I had waited, those 8 weeks before I had pumped, knowing what I know now, to establish the right amount of supply just to feed my child and maybe occasionally pump after that. I had, because of this pumping, a whole deep freezer full of milk within the first couple weeks. I was just asking my body to make too much, and I did get some advice from the wonderful women at Milky Mamas on how to try to slowly taper off that supply. I couldn't cut cold turkey because I would have gotten mastitis, or a number of other things could have gone wrong. So it was a very slow process to get me to stop making all of this extra milk. Unfortunately, because of the antibiotics that my son was put on, he developed thrush. He didn't have the gut flora or the good bacteria in his stomach to fight off this infection, this yeast infection that develops on the tongue. It's so gross. It affects the mom, whatever is touched with the mouth can have this. So I actually was really uncomfortable. I know my son was having a hard time swallowing. He wasn't wanting to nurse as much. It can really hurt that nursing relationship. We tried different things like Gentian Violet, which is just a mess. It got this purple stuff all over my kid's face and didn't help at all. We did get a prescription called Nystatin from the pediatrician that eventually helped. But before then, I found out that all the milk that I had pumped had to be thrown away, which was awful. That's the worst feeling when you're trying to keep this milk. Everything had to be boiled. My shirts had to go get washed out in the sunlight to try to kill it. There was just a lot going on. And what really helped through this whole thing was the support that I had. I would have been really scared and I would have doubted myself a lot had I not have had this online presence. I had mentioned in my other video that I lived an hour away from civilization, basically. It wasn't easy for me to take an infant and drive to go to other breastfeeding groups that were in town. So I had this online support, and I had a partner that was just key in this whole thing. Every time that I needed water, anytime I wanted to wash my pumping supply or get this pillow, I thought I needed all these accessories to breastfeed at first, but nursing a toddler now, I've figured it out. It's okay. But anytime I needed any of that stuff, my partner was just amazing in providing those for me. I was not very confident in nursing in public. I was so terrified that someone would tell me something negative that I tried to avoid it at all costs. My husband set up this cute little nursing station in my car that was way more comfortable than trying to nurse in public anyway. It was with that support that it was able to work. Emotionally, I needed something good to happen. Everything else had gone wrong, and for some reason, the breastfeeding was okay. You know, I can't whistle. I'm not really good at sports, but I feel like if I was living back in the day, I would have been a wet nurse or something. Or if we were cave people, I'd be the type of person that would be like, okay, I'll feed all the babies. You guys go catch dinner. It just came easier than I thought, although I did need help along the way, and that support was amazing. So that was something good that happened, and I think it was the breastfeeding that got us through it. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask and I will answer them as best I can, and we'll hopefully do another video soon. So thank you.